Shrimad's divine grace, founder of Iskana Bhai Charanada Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Granthara Shrimadbhagavatam ki Jai. Their most merciful Lordship Shri Shri Javieri ki Shri Jagannath Shri Baladev Mahishibhadra ki Shri Nataji Shri Balagopal ki Shri Shri ki Nitai Go. All glories to the assembled.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the Lord Spirit of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Jojayam Dhiraya Nasta Praishu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistiki. Reading from Shrimadbhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, Text 3, 4. 5? Okay. Not 3 or 4. Yaya.
Yaya.
Samohito.
Samohito.
Jiva.
Jiva.
Yaya Samohito Jiva.
Yaya Samohito Jiva.
Atmanam.
Atmanam.
Trigunatmakam.
Trigunatmakam.
Atmanam Trigunatmakam. Paro Pi Manute Nartam Paro Pi Manute Nartam Tat Kritam Chabipadyate Tat Kritam Chabipadyate Yaya Samohito Jiva Yaya Samohito Jiva Yaya Samohito Jiva Atmanam Trigunatmakam Atmanam Trigunatmakam Atmanam Trigunatmakam Paropi Manute Nartam Paropi Manute Nartam Paropi Manute Martam Tatkritam Chabipadyate Tatkritam Chabipadyate Tatkritam Chabipadyate
Yaya Samohito Jiva
Yaya Samohito Jiva
Atmanam Trigunatmakam
Atmanam Trigunatmakam
Paropi Manute Nartham
Paropi Manute Nartam
Tatkritam Chavipadyate
Tatkritam Chavipadyate Yaya
Yaya
by whom? Samohita
Samohita
illusion
Illusion
Jiva
Jiva
the living entity
Living Entities
Atmanam
Atmanam
self Triguna Atmakam
Trigunatmakam
conditioned by the three modes of nature
Conditioned by the three modes of nature
or a product of matter. Para transcendental Api in spite of Manute takes it for granted.
Takes it for granted
Anartham things not wanted.
Things not wanted
Tat
That
by that.
by that
Kritam cha
Kritam Cha
reaction.
Reaction
Avipadyate
Avipadyate
Yaya Samohito Jiva Atmanam Trigunatmakam Paropi Manute Nartam Tatkritam Chavipadyate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. Please repeat. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. Purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The root cause of suffering by the materialistic living beings is pointed out with remedial measures which are to be undertaken, and also the ultimate perfection to be gained. All this is mentioned in this particular verse. The living being is by constitution transcendental to the material encagement, but he is now imprisoned by the external energy, and therefore he thinks himself one of the material products And due to this unholy contact, the pure spiritual energy suffers material miseries under the modes of material energy, material natures. The living entity misunderstands himself to be a material product. This means that the present perverted way of thinking, feeling, and willing under material conditions is not natural for him. But he has his normal way of thinking, feeling, and willing. The living being in his original state is not without thinking, willing, and feeling, power. It is also confirmed that in the Bhagavad Gita that the actual knowledge of the conditioned soul is now covered by nescience. Thus, the theory that a living being is absolute impersonal Brahman is refuted herein. This cannot be because the living entity has his own way of thinking in his original unconditional state also. The present conditional state is due to the influence of the external energy, which means that the illusory energy takes the initiative while the Supreme Lord is aloof. The Lord does not desire that a living being be illusioned by the external energy. The external energy is aware of this fact, but still she accepts a thankless task of keeping the forgotten soul under the illusion by her bewildering influence. The Lord does not interfere with the task of the illusory energy because such performances of the illusory energy are also necessary for the reformation of the conditioned soul. An affectionate father does not like his children to be chastised by another agent, yet he puts his disobedient children under the custody of a severe man just to bring them to order. But the all-affectionate, almighty Father at the same time desires relief for the conditioned soul, relief from the clutches of the illusory energy. The king puts the disobedient citizens within the walls of the jail, but sometimes the king, desiring the prisoner's relief, personally goes there and pleads for reformation, and on his doing so, the prisoners are set free. Similarly, the Supreme Lord descends from his kingdom upon the kingdom of illusory energy and personally gives relief in the form of the Bhagavad Gita, wherein he personally suggests that although the ways of illusory energy are very stiff to overcome, one who surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord is set free by the order of the Supreme. This surrendering process is the remedial measure for getting relief from the bewildering ways of the illusory energy. The surrendering process is completed by the influence of association. The Lord has suggested, therefore, that by the influence of the speeches of saintly persons who have actually realized the Supreme, men are engaged in his transcendental loving service. The conditioned soul gets a taste for hearing about the Lord, and by such hearing only is he gradually elevated to the platform of respect, devotion, and attachment for the Lord. The whole thing is completed by the surrendering process. Herein also, the same suggestion is made by the Lord in his incarnation of Vyasadeva. This means that the conditioned souls are being reclaimed by the Lord both ways, namely by the process of punishment, by the external energy of the Lord, and by himself as the spiritual master within and without. Within the heart of every living being, the Lord himself, as the supersoul, Paramatma, becomes the spiritual master, and from without, he becomes the spiritual master in the shape of scriptures, saints, and the initiator spiritual master. This is still more explicitly explained in the next shloka. Personal superintendence of the illusory energy is confirmed in the Vedas, the Kena Upanishad, in relation to the demigod's controlling power. Herein also it is clearly stated that the living entity is controlled by the external energy in a personal capacity. The living being, thus subject to the control of external energy, is differently situated. It is clear, however, from the present statement of Bhagavatam that the same external energy is situated in the inferior position before the personality of Godhead, or the perfect being. The perfect being, or the Lord, cannot be approached even by the illusory energy, who can only work out the living entities, who can only work on the living entities. Therefore, it is sheer imagination that the Supreme Lord is illusioned by the illusory energy, and thus becomes a living being. If the living being and the Lord were in the same category, then it would have been quite possible for Vyasadeva to see it, and there would have been no question of material distress on the part of the illusion being. For the Supreme Being is fully cognizant. So there are so many unscrupulous imaginations on the part of the monist to endeavor to put forth both the Lord and the living being in the same category. Had the Lord and the living beings been the same, then Srila Sukadeva Goswami would not have taken the trouble to describe the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, for they would all be manifestations of illusory energy. Shrimadbhagavatam is the summum bonum remedy for suffering humanity in the clutches of Maya. Srila Vyasadeva, therefore, first of all, diagnosed the actual disease of the conditioned souls, i.e., their being illusioned by the external energy. He also saw the perfect Supreme Being, from whom illusory energy is far removed. Though he saw both the diseased conditioned souls and also the cause of the disease. And the remedial measures are suggested in the next verse. Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living beings are undoubtedly qualitatively one, but the Lord is the controller of the illusory energy, whereas the living entity is controlled by the illusory energy. Thus the Lord and the living beings are simultaneously one and different. Another point is distinct herein, that eternal relation between the Lord and the living being is transcendental. Otherwise, the Lord would not have taken the trouble to reclaim the conditioned souls from the clutches of Maya. In the same way, the living entity is also required to revive his natural love and affection for the Lord, and that is the highest perfection of the living entity. Shrimadbhagavatam treats the conditioned soul with an aim to that goal of life. Om Jnanatimarandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshusumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave. Again, being pointed out here, the aim of Krishna consciousness is pure love of God. And automatically comes with that the freedom from the illusory potency, because once you're in the presence of God, as is brought out here, the illusory potency can't come into the presence of God. So he's not illusioned by it. And the illusion we have of the material energy is that it's somehow a means to provide satisfaction. And we get that from a very young age taught to us. And then when we grow up and start learning about marital relationships, then we start really believing that thoroughly. You know, having children, having a house, having all this stuff in the material world. It's a big illusion that people have to think that all these things are the source of their happiness. So a devotee, by following God, a devotee already having settled in his mind the determination that he's going to serve Krishna, then he's automatically freed from those illusions. And so our everyday activities as well give us the strength to be able to be free at every moment, continuously. And then when we're chanting, maybe past relationships with members of the opposite gender or whatever, experiences we've had with things in this material world, they come into the mind as a distraction, but the devotee doesn't let them bother him. Just let them pass. And then just see, the one thing about chanting with your mind is there's no more room for anything else. It's like nothing else can move in because you only have that function with the brain to be able to do. You think, if you're thinking about Krishna or if you're chanting a mantra, then that's the completeness we have the ability to do with our minds. So it's fully occupied. So then no other else thing can move in. No thoughts, I'm too cold, I'm too hot, I'm too old, I'm too young, all these other contaminating features of the material experience. There are more than likely those beings in the spiritual realm who have never had exposure to the material energy at all. Now, Narad Muni, he has the ability to come and go, and so he knows and has full experience of what the material energy is like. But there are those in the spiritual world who've never left the spiritual world. Never, ever, ever left the spiritual world. And so all they know is eternity. Anything else would be completely foreign, as foreign to them as eternity is to us. And doubts and fears and all these things that exist in this realm doesn't even exist there. No such thing as fear. Can you imagine? No such thing as fear. And, there's no demons. There's only rumors. There are rumors of demons in the spiritual world. But there are no demons allowed. So, those pastimes that are engaged in by devotees sometimes act out pastimes of Krishna that he has taken part in the material world. But they only know that as acting. They haven't actually been here, most of them. And so they are the majority that when we surrender to Krishna, that we're actually becoming co-citizens with in the Vaikuntha realm. And we won't get an ID card for that. You won't get pulled over and asked for your ID either by anybody there. Because everybody in that place is so far superiorly elevated spiritually that there is no need. There's no need for laws there. Everybody's already abiding by love of God. Laws are made for those who are miscreants or not abiding by fundamental principles of loving God with all of our mind, all of our strength, all of our body, all of our breath. So if we follow that principle, then automatically everything will fall into place in our lives that we need to complete this perfection that is being described here. And as it's being explained, that Krishna wants us to get out of the illusory potency more than we want to. And so he is seeing that. And this is why he's made it available to us, because we are of his nature. We are eternal, just like he is. Just like when we see people suffering, it causes us pain too. And Krishna, seeing the condition we are in, even when we think ourselves in an exalted position in this world, it's nothing compared to those souls in that eternal realm who have been with Krishna eternally, having access to all the spiritual planets that he is governing in each of his expansions in the Vaikuntha realm. Krishna, I didn't get a chance to come down yesterday to see how many. I think we had quite a good-sized group here, though, didn't we? Devotees are taking part now a little bit more in Harinam, and it is the Harinam that will attract people. Because ultimately, the only thing Krishna is really requiring in this age, with that chanting being the Dharma of the age, if a soul does nothing else but chant their rounds every day, there's a good likelihood they could even make it back to Godhead. But guaranteed will be a better life in their next life. So one who is born into a Vaishnava family in the disciplic chain, then they're so protected and covered. They're already in the spiritual environment without even knowing it, without even realizing it. So many times Srila Prabhupada would point out that if a devotee doesn't complete his perfection in this life, still, the next time around will be much more easy for him to do that. So we have these promises. And we see what extent Krishna is going to, in every age, to free the living entities, as this verse is pointing out here, the purport of this verse is pointing out here too, that Krishna takes so many forms throughout history, coming to the earth many, many times in many different forms. All because, and we can look at this as his wanting to relieve mankind of the sufferings that he's going through, the sufferings that we're going through. I'm experiencing some suffering these days, and I'm praying to Krishna it doesn't affect my service. That's the biggest thing. When the body becomes dysfunctional and you can't serve anymore, that's the big problem. But the nice thing about chanting is we have to be pretty disabled to not be able to chant, even with the mind. Even if they cut our throat out, you still have the mind to be able to chant. So there should be no hindrance whatsoever for our being able to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, all throughout the day, and bringing others fine. At the Sunday feast, do you get a chance to sit with new guests sometimes? Yeah, at the Sunday feast? Yeah. Are you finding them to be leaning towards wanting to know more? Or are they just like, are they inquisitive or?
Some are inquisitive, some just come, just go.
Is it mostly college students we're seeing are coming, or?
No, not really. Some students.
Some. When I first became aware of spirituality and spiritual life, and then delved into the study of the scriptures, I started to believe that study of any other books doesn't really help the human being in his pursuit of fulfilling his spiritual requirements in this world. But then, when you take into consideration, if a person doesn't study in this world, they're going to be stuck with a pretty low-based form of work to have to engage themselves in just to provide food on their table. So, from one perspective, it would seem that in order to have the ability
to function in this society the way it's set up, one must look towards reading and learning to some degree, at least. But what happens, even with reading and learning about anything in this material world, we're constantly filling our minds with those things. Contrary to the same things being read in sacred scriptures will take on a spiritual meaning. But training is different than reading pastimes of Krishna, although they can both be a learning experience. But all these trainings that they have for jobs that are available in this material world, they totally take the mind off of his ability to concentrate on God, concentrate on Krishna. Any job, it would seem, you're taking part in this material world is going to deprive you of the time you have that you could otherwise use in Krishna's service. Do you have any thoughts about getting a job? No. Fulfilling your collegiate learnings? No, you have no hankering for that?
Quick job to just be here.
That's great. That's ecstatic. See, you are very rare, though. Because to realize the value of spirituality takes many births. And then what to speak of surrendering to Krishna. So we can see in devotees a difference in desire. Devotees are satisfied with the very basics of life. And they want to use everything they have for Krishna's pleasure. And they have no needs. I don't have any needs. I don't know who has needs. Because everything in the temple is so provided for. I don't need anything, you know. Have all the food, all the clothes, all the comforts I need in life. And so I don't need a big yacht. I don't need a big fancy car. I don't need a big house. And everything is provided. And I'm like wishing that everybody could know this kind of freedom. Because just claiming ownership on anything in this world that has what might be considered much value, a house or a boat or a car, these kinds of things. You sign over a certain amount of your life to the use of that thing. Then you got to register that thing. You got to pay the government a certain amount of money to use that thing. It's a big involvement with karma. Every act we take part in this world has its connection to karmic reactions. So the only way we can get free from that is to make sure that our actions are being done with a spiritual purpose, with the end result being that will provide those who are benefited by our actions with a realization of eternity, with a realization of the person who holds all power in their hands, and who is all merciful, who is all loving. And once these teachings are given to children at a very young age, all these wars will be done away with. These wars are so contrary to human advancement. They build up a city, make a city beautiful as they want it to be, and then somebody comes along and just destroys it. Bombs, burning, fires. And then, not only was all the time that was spent to build that up wasted, but now what is left to remain of the results makes the earth a wasteland as well. But you can look at all these houses being built within our society, and they're all expressions of people's false ego. I, me, and mine. Mine is the best. I want mine to be better than everyone's. which is an impetus for us to engage to our best ability. But it shouldn't be the driving factor that we look upon everything we do as that which makes us better than everybody else. We want everybody else to have at least as much as we do, to be able to serve at least to the extent that we are serving. In the material competitive world, the statement about it is it's dog eat dog. So in effect, humans acting like dogs against each other. They bite the hand that feeds them. On the one hand, they're paying taxes into a government, and then every day of their life, they spend time talking against the government they are feeding money into. This is like a contradiction of life, isn't it? On the one hand, I pay somebody to kill someone. On the other hand, they say, I don't believe in death. I don't believe in murder. But the leaders' beliefs in their nations cause the leaders of other nations who have different beliefs to believe that they have the right to kill everybody else who doesn't believe like them. This is insanity, real insanity, when you analyze what war is. And the people who actually have to do the fighting are not that people that have any difference against the people they're fighting against. They're both being forced to fight because of the government regulations and principles and being told by the government the purpose is right and that they're doing it for God, doing it for justice, they're doing it for the right of mankind. And to some extent you can say that if someone like Hitler hadn't been stopped, then there might to this day now be rulership that would not even allow any freedom of religion or anything like that. Very racist perspective as well that he had and carried with him. And what happens, these leaders that develop these false egos to the extent that they do, that they become popular in the eyes of the people. And what does Krishna say? What great men do, then the common people will follow. And so this is what's happening. If people who are great leaders in this world are looked at as that, do not have self-realization to know the nature of the self, to know the eternal nature of the self, to know the position the self has towards the supreme person, then their whole life people could follow it and still not come to the understanding of purity of love of God. Because success in this material world is not based upon how much you love God. And sometimes Krishna allows people to experience enormous amounts of so-called pleasure in this world because of the suffering that they're about to experience after this life. So, enjoyment and suffering has a completely different place in a devotee's mind than the same experiences have in someone who is unaware of the fact that all these are reactions for the things we engage in this world, all the things we're dissatisfied with. We won't take responsibility for being the cause of it, but ultimately we suffer because of our own doings. And that's what makes Krishna consciousness such a wonderful experience, is that because God knows the nature of our weaknesses, He's made a process that anybody can take part in. Anybody can chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. As long as their heart towards Krishna is right. But Krishna, we can keep ourselves from being able to chant by forming thoughts against Krishna, by forming thoughts against the process, by forming thoughts that are detrimental, blasphemous, and injurious to those who are practicing Krishna consciousness. Is telephone going? This is a big, long purport here. And it's all in this one verse, just explaining about, read that verse again. Due to the external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. So we're actually believing something about ourselves that's not true. That's what this involvement with the material energy is. It's believing wrongly that the material energy is the source of our pleasure. And then by the suffering it causes, then Veda Vyasa is writing these teachings to free us from that. I'm going to cut class short today because I got bodily problems I have to deal with. Any comments, any questions, realizations you'd like to share?
Like this verse, it's pointing about so much on the coming out from the material sufferings, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how did you feel about that when you came initially in the Krishna consciousness?
Well, when I first came to Krishna consciousness, I was probably what would be called a fanatic Christian. Because when I read in the Bible where the Garden of Eden was, I wanted to go there. I was on my way to take a boat to Florida. Out of Florida, I was going to take a banana boat to Africa and go to the Garden of Eden. So when I came to Krishna consciousness, after years from that, I lived in a cave for 2 years. Meditated in a cave. And I took jobs here and there, part-time, but I went 2 years without even using money. And I came to find out that men's desires for money is what a lot of times gets them into problems. So when I came to Krishna consciousness is what's explained in the Bible. The initiation process, the being clothed in white. This all happens after you go to heaven. In the Bible, that's what it is. So for me to come to Krishna consciousness and experience all those things I was expecting would only happen if I followed right. And here I get that in Krishna consciousness automatically. Everybody has it. So then too, when I saw Krishna in the multimedia presentation they have down there, have you seen Krishna downstairs with the gopis? When I saw him there, boy, it just like it clicked in my mind. Because in Christianity, everybody's taught to believe that God is old, and he sits on a throne, and he's a ruler, right? He's a judge. Well, that's Yamaraj. But Krishna, taking this eternally youthful form, oh boy, that just made so much sense to me. Of course God would want to be in that place and to do that. So I just surrendered. Oh God, this is you. I know I'm here now. I'm in the place I'm supposed to be. So I looked at that form of Krishna and I said, Krishna, whatever you want me to do, I'll do that. I folded my hand. I shaved my head that night. Called up work the next day. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not coming back to work anymore. I'm joining the Hare Krishna. So, and too, that was Easter Sunday. And for most American families, Easter Sunday, especially for Christian, it's like a big celebration, you know. So I was due to be in my family's home that Easter Sunday, because I was thinking this would be a stopover. I eat here for an hour or so, and then I go home, you know. No, but I couldn't leave once I got here. And so I didn't even call my parents for 3 days. They didn't know what happened to me. They thought maybe I died or something. You know? And because, as Dasrat told me, if you are sincerely looking for God, he will reveal himself to you. And so that's what I feel really happened when I saw the multimedia presentation. It was so beautifully done. Amiyatma, he had done that. I realized, that was the first day I came and that was running. I had in my mindset that didn't start until another 3 years, but that presentation was made. And it was so, you haven't seen probably that multimedia presentation where they have video showing, oh, you saw that? Yeah. It's so beautifully done that anyone coming in from a professional perspective or anything, they could appreciate the way it's been done, the way it's been revealed of how God loves us so much and cares, and then what his interests are for us. And I just fell in love with the way everybody's working together too. Everybody was like sharing the same beliefs together, more so than I saw in Christianity. And when I was a Christian, I would go to these fanatic churches. They sing and dance and, raise a ruckus. But I came to find out later as well that some of the practices going on there, and I came by this knowledge by simply practicing Krishna consciousness. So after a few weeks of taking part in the process here, I came to find out that it's all encompassing and gives realizations about all the other paths that people are on. So that was really what convinced me that this was the superior form of religion on the whole planet. To this point that I found, if somebody else can reveal something greater, might take consideration, but I don't know, I don't think so. Krishna is the greatest person I've seen ever. I don't know how anybody could be greater than Krishna. Any other comments? Any other questions? Jai. Shrimadbhagavatam, ki jai. Srila Prabhupada, ki jai. So we will be on verse 6 tomorrow.